Hello and welcome back to another FPL video. Today we're doing our team selection for game week 34 and it is free hit week, so we're getting a one-off week to try and boost the rank that I currently have, which right now has dropped under 500k after a pretty bad game week 33. So I'm going to be looking to use some differentials this week to try and make a final push. Obviously we've only got a couple of weeks left before the end of the season. I'd like to try and get as close to at least the 5-digit rank as possible. I think it's going to be very tough now that game week 33 was a bit of a bust, but it really depends. I think this is going to be the final week where we really can make a difference to our ranks. I think a lot of people are going to have very similar teams heading into game week 35 and onwards. But before we look at game week 34, this is how game week 33 went for me, and I dropped about, I want to say, about 80,000 places. I think I was about 420-ish thousandth in the world, maybe 430. And I really thought with my maximum doubles, I think I had 9 doublers this week, I really would have been able to get ahead at least, in towards the 300,000s, and it didn't really go that way at all. The captaincy in Marmoush was a big disappointment. There was really no one in terms of captaincies that would have been good unless I went, very outside the box with like a Leandro Trossard or something instead of Saka. But personally, I just wasn't really anywhere near doing anything like that. So a very disappointing week, considering the amount of doublers that there was. A 58-point week is absolutely terrible. I think the only players that weren't doubling was Salah and Isak, and there's still so many 2 and 3 pointers in there as well. So a couple of minutes risk players in Savinho. Before I brought him in, he started I think 8 matches in a row, and then as soon as I brought him in, he got benched and then benched again in the double game week. So that wasn't ideal, and I don't even know if he played any minutes yesterday either. So not really too great with him. Saka, of course, a big disappointment as well. Even though he did play quite a few minutes in the first match against Ipswich, he's still never really done that great. Palace players, pretty disappointing again. It was nice to get the clean sheet in the first match, but then the second match pretty poor against Arsenal, which we kind of expected anyway. It was nice to see Mateta get on the score sheet. The defence was decent, 7 6-pointers all around, but again, talking about having a double game week every single player there, you were probably hoping for a little bit more, but like I said, it is what it is. Obviously I bench boosted last week for a 6-point bench boost. Thankfully it would have outscored this week's bench boost anyway, which again, the bench was absolutely terrible after Villa absolutely mauled Newcastle. That would have been what I was relying on if I was going to be bench boosting in game week 33. So I can't really complain too much. The bench boost never really worked out for a lot of people this week, but let's take a look at some of our fixtures for game week 34. So this is where we're at for picking some players for game week 34 on our free hit. Now, if you haven't noticed already, the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating on FPL, has been updated, and now we've got dark green fixtures for I think the first time in 8 years. Southampton and Leicester are now dark green fixtures, which is pretty mental. I don't think I've ever seen that. I've not played FPL long enough. I think I was 14 the last time that there was dark green fixtures in FPL, so that's a new one for me. Man United and Spurs have also been updated to green fixtures, as you can see with Liverpool and Bournemouth's matches, so that is another one to keep an eye on. But this week it is going to be very heavily focused. I'm seeing a lot of free hit drafts, so very heavily focused on targeting the relegating teams, the Southamptons, the Leicesters and the Ipswiches. A lot of people picking triple Fulham, double Fulham, triple Wolves, double Wolves, and of course triple Newcastle as well. I'm definitely interested in a couple of those players. I think with Fulham, I'm a little bit more sceptical. I think Fulham have only kept 1 clean sheet in their last 12 matches. Obviously, a lot of people picking like Bernd Leno. If you watch my differentials video from a couple of days ago, I obviously seen the template from 150 random FPL drafts, as you can see on screen now. Bernd Leno was a very popular pick in goals, and I'm not really too convinced, purely because of that clean sheet record for Fulham, and I really highly doubt Leno picks up a lot of saves against Southampton, so kind of iffy about him. Obviously Ryan Sessegnon is also another big popular option. I do like him, but there was a quote that came out today saying that Harry Wilson is fit and will feature So a little bit sceptical of his minutes. So still question marks around whether he makes the final team or not. And again, if he's not going to be keeping a clean sheet or even starting, it's pretty straightforward not to go with him. For Wolves, obviously Cunha, a really popular option. Strand Larson is quite popular as well. Ait Nouri, I think, is basically a lock in the team at this point. He's been one of the best attacking forwards, best attacking defenders in recent game weeks, and obviously a really nice fixture against Leicester where you would hope that they could keep a clean sheet as well. Ait Nouri is definitely one of the first defenders on the team sheet. With Bournemouth and Brighton, there's... I think Bournemouth's fixture isn't as good as it's made out to be against Man United, but I definitely think you could still pick a few of their players. Kepa, Kerkez, Kluivert, Semenyo, and of course Evan Nilsson up front. Still really good picks. I think they definitely can score, maybe keep a clean sheet against United. With Brighton, again, the picks are a little bit more sparse. João Pedro is suspended, so that leaves the door open for Welbeck to be on penalties, which is, makes him a really nice pick. And you've also got the likes of Matoma and Estepinian, who I tweeted out about today, with West Ham being the weakest right side in the Premier League so far this season. I think Matoma could be a really nice differential, especially if Wan-Bissaka is going to be out injured, because obviously that leaves the right back spot very exposed as well. So, options for differentials, obviously that's what I'm interested in this week. With Liverpool, I'm seeing a lot of teams with Luis Diaz in it, and I'm just not really seeing the hype too much. He's not really been brilliant in recent weeks, and yes, he's playing striker, but with Jota back, there's a high chance that he gets subbed quite early. Gakpo as well. There's so many players in that Liverpool team that can take away minutes from Diaz, and I think there's a decent amount of midfielders that you can go for over Diaz, and personally I think I'd rather just stick with Salah, and then stick the captaincy on him and then see where it goes from there. Pick some players with some better fixtures, because Spurs is a good fixture. Obviously now it is a green fixture on the FDR, but I definitely think there's better picks that you can go for, and Diaz has been very inconsistent. I don't really think I've seen him in any FPL teams since about game week 10, so not someone that I'm really looking at, to be honest. But on those players that I am looking at, I've got a short list that I have made up. These are just the final players that I'm kind of interested in for my own free hit team. Players that could potentially make the final 11. I will show my free hit team in just a little minute, but this is kind of the pool of players that I'm going for. I've got Leno in goals. Again, like I said, not the biggest fan, so it probably won't be him, but he is still one of the popular options and still a really nice pick as well. I've got Pope, I've got Sells, and I've got Sa. Really good goalkeeper options. Obviously, Sells is the best goalkeeper in the league so far this season with the most clean sheets. They're playing against Brentford at home. Pope, Newcastle with the highest clean sheet odds, 46% against Ipswich. And then you've got Sa as well, of course, playing against Leicester, who have struggled to score in the most recent matches. So that's kind of why they're there. In midfield, obviously I'm trying to pick 5 midfielders, potentially 4 midfielders if I want 3 up front, but I'm only really looking at about 6. There's not the biggest pool of players for midfield that I'm personally looking at. I think a lot of people obviously have like Cole Palmer, Luis Diaz, as we already mentioned, Jared Bowen. I'm just not really looking at those guys personally, just not really seeing the appeal that other people are seeing. But we've got Salah, who's 100% going to be in the team. We've got Barnes. You can see Murphy on there as well. I'm between picking one of those because I definitely want a Newcastle defender alongside Alexander Isak. So I need to pick one of the midfielders. It's either going to be Barnes or it's going to be Murphy by the end or by the deadline. I've got Mbeumo as well. Forest haven't really been good defensively at all recently. Looking at just the last 5 game weeks, Nottingham Forest are the 4th worst defence when it comes to expected goals conceded. So yes, they've built up a good reputation of having a solid defence this season, obviously having the most clean sheets, but they have been very, very poor recently. Mbeumo is someone who's been on red hot form this season, of course takes the penalties as well, so that's kind of why I'm on Mbeumo. I think he is definitely going to be in my team. He is one of the more popular picks, as you can see by the 150 random drafts, but I do think there is enough differentiating there that he is still going to be a decent one to try and gain some rank. Matoma is going to be my big differential this week. I really like the idea of just going for someone who I think is going to be very, very unpopular. I feel like it's good to have just one big differential in here, and Mitoma was only in 7 of the 150 drafts that I looked at, so he's going to be very unpopular. If he does well, I think he's going to skyrocket my rank really nicely. So it's someone that, if it just feels a lot, but it's one of those feel good kind of players if he does quite well, because no one owns him, and you always feel a bit better of yourself if you're going a little bit off template. So good to have those kind of players. Personally, I just realised I skipped over the defenders as well. We've got 8 defenders in here. What I'm looking at, I'm personally looking at Van Dijk over Trent Alexander-Arnold purely on minutes, and again spoke about Van Dijk on Twitter as well. Spurs have conceded the most set pieces, or the most shots from set pieces, in the last 10 game weeks, so I think there's an opportunity for Van Dijk to get a goal there, and again his minutes are just a lot more secure than Trent Alexander-Arnold, so he would be my Liverpool defender pick if I'm going to go for a Liverpool defender. We've obviously got Cucurella in there. We've got 3 Newcastle defenders, which I'm still trying to decide who to go for between Trippier, Livramento and Schär. And then I've got Estepinian in there as well. He probably won't make the team, but I do still like him as an outside pick, similar to Mitoma. Obviously plays on the same side against that weak West Ham right hand side. And then up front is where it's a little bit more difficult, trying to pick that third striker spot. I'm going to go for Isak, I'm going to go for Cunha, and then the final spot is between those 4 players on screen: Evan Nilsson, Chris Wood, Danny Welbeck and Jimenez as well. Muniz get confirmed that he was out injured as well, so that is going to be good for Jimenez's minutes. Obviously takes the penalties too against Southampton, so there's a really good opportunity for Jimenez to do well. But if you have been keeping up with this year's team selection videos, you know how much I hate Raul Jimenez and how long I owned him for this season without him doing well. And if anyone's looking at picking Jimenez, take it from someone who's had him all season. He only performs in the games that you don't have him. He only performs against the big teams where you bench him. Liverpool, he gets goals. Arsenal, he gets goals. He plays against Southampton and Leicester. It's a dead performance and he absolutely ghosts. That's just what I can say. I think I owned him for about 20 game weeks or something like that. It might be about 18 game weeks, and I probably got about 20 points out of him, and the benched about 35-40. So not a good experience with Jimenez personally, so I probably am going to steer clear just because I don't like the guy. So I'm between, Evan Nilsson, Welbeck and Wood. More so Evan Nilsson and Welbeck. Welbeck's looking really, really nice as a pick. Because he's obviously got the penalties now with João Pedro out and a really good fixture against West Ham. Evan Nilsson is a little bit more of a differential pick, I think. He's going to be less owned than Welbeck, but he doesn't take the penalties and debatably has a harder fixture against Manchester United. But I've just got that gut feeling that he is going to do really, really well. So he is going to be in my team for right now. And as you can see, this is the team that we have picked up at the minute. Now, we've got a couple of differential picks, but it is fairly template at the minute. I think Van Dijk's going to be pretty differential. Mitoma, of course, a big differential in there. Evan Nilsson will be a differential, and potentially Mbeumo as well. So we've got maybe 3 or 4 differentials, and the rest is going to be pretty template with Isak, Cunha, Barnes, Salah, Sessegnon, Aït-Nouri and Nick Pope. Now on the bench I've lined it up with players that I'm still heavily considering. Sells potentially as the goalkeeper. Cucurella is someone that I really like the look of. He's just going to come in if there is doubts over Ryan Sessegnon. If he's not looking like he's going to be starting, I probably will just start Cucurella. Potentially Bruno Fernandes. I spoke about him in the differentials video as well. He looks like he could do really good against Bournemouth, and again he'll be a huge differential too. He was only in 4 of the 150 drafts that we took a look at, and he could potentially be a big hitter against Bournemouth. And then of course we've got Estepinian in there as well, who is just going to sit on the bench. I think it's very unlikely that he makes the final team, especially the fact that I've already got Mitoma in there. I'm not going to double up on that Brighton, the Brighton differential. It's a big risk going for either of those, but I feel like at this point in the season that's really where I've got to look. So now I've kind of come to the situation before the deadline where I'm left with about 4 dilemmas. It's really picking between Barnes or Murphy. Which Newcastle midfielder do I want to go for? Obviously leaning towards Barnes right now, but I could very well be swayed to a Jacob Murphy. Obviously we'll get press conferences and stuff coming tomorrow, and we'll see what happens with that. The other one I've got on the top right is Leno and Schär or Sessegnon and Pope. Now, as I mentioned already, not the biggest fan of Leno, but I do like the idea of having a Newcastle defender over Nick Pope in goals. But I feel pretty locked in on Van Dijk and Aït-Nouri, so the only other player that could come out for a Newcastle defender would be Ryan Sessegnon. So yeah, again, really just waiting on press conferences for that, maybe some more news on whether Sessegnon starts. But right now I'm focused on Nick Pope in goals, but potentially looking to bring in a Newcastle defender. Up front, down to Evan Nilsson and Welbeck. I think Welbeck looks like the better pick on paper since he has the penalties and the better fixture, but again, like I said, a gut feeling against Evan Nilsson, and sometimes that is just all you need. And I feel like if he was going to do well this week, I wouldn't be as pissed as if Welbeck was going to do well, purely because I've had Evan Nilsson in my team since I made my first draft. And then finally, we've got starting Cucurella. Again, he's another player that could potentially come in, and that would mean having Nick Pope in goals, no Newcastle defenders, and no Ryan Sessegnon. So that is where I'm at with my current free hit team. Let me know what you think, and would you make any changes to it down in the comments section. I am very happy with this. I think I've kind of been tinkering about for the last couple hours and haven't really made too many changes. Obviously, a couple of the dilemmas like Barnes and Murphy is just something that, you know, could come right up to the deadline. It feels like it's just going to be a 50-50 at that point. If you are a Newcastle fan, let me know in the comments as well what you think is going to happen with those minutes. Do you think Barnes is going to play more? Do you think Murphy's going to play more? Do you think Gordon is going to end up just starting that match? If you've got any info, drop it down in the comments. It would be much, much appreciated. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy. If you're using your free hit this week, I hope it goes well for you. And make sure to let me know if you're also going for some big differentials in your team. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you all in the next one.